June 8th and another Workflow Wednesday on Now with Troy. And on Now with Troy, I talk about two things: what's happening on the ServiceNow platform now, and what's happening right now in the business world. Well, this week, it's a cyber security focus. And I'm super excited to have my guest. Let me unpin my camera. And Mike Ellerhorst from ImagineX. Mike, thanks for jumping on with me.
Absolutely. Thanks, Troy. Always a pleasure to spend some time and share some knowledge.
Indeed. We've been talking for a while that as we look at cybersecurity, obviously ServiceNow has so many different capabilities to add into that, but that's often the technology piece. And with ImagineX being a partner of Thirdera, you can bring in so much of that great wisdom that helps the people in process. But this week, and in fact, yesterday, I got to catch part of your session. You had an opportunity to be on stage at Qualys Security Conference 2022. Tell me about that. So excited for you to get on stage and really be recognized as an expert in the people and process around cyber.
Yeah. Thanks. It's been a bit of a whirlwind of a week. Denver on Monday, San Francisco Tuesday, back to Denver late last night. So I need my coffee cup with me, but
Right.
Yeah, it was real exciting. So Qualys this year has done this roadshow where they've had these QSC, Qualys Security Conference, in about 10 different cities so far across the US. And this week being the RSA conference in San Francisco, which brings a lot of cybersecurity practitioners and vendors and
Right.
That ecosystem into San Francisco. Qualys has always had a conference across the street to capture some of that energy and tap into the ecosystem. And so, with this being a really big week, the session that I actually got to participate in was the announcement of the rollout of the next iteration of Qualys's, we'll call it flagship product, VMDR, so vulnerability management, detection, and response. So there's a big announcement, VMDR 2.0, some additional features that have been in beta for the last couple months are now generally available. And and it was really exciting to talk with Nagi, who's the chief product officer at Qualys, about this shift in narrative that Qualys is really trying to support from vulnerability management and looking at it as a bit of a technical challenge to risk management, and it being just a piece of broader business and technology risk and running a business. And so it was fun to talk about my experience standing up patch management programs, helping customers design vulnerability management teams. And and one of the pieces of the announcement was this native connector and marketplace application on the ServiceNow platform. So really continuing to strengthen that partnership I see between Qualys and ServiceNow.
Right. And we talked a little bit about that before, and so many things in ServiceNow. I mean, they've got several clients right now that we're kind of walking through that journey of CMDB to CSDM and all the things that go with that. And I think in the cyberspace, there's also journeys, whether it's GRC to IRM to ESG, right? There's so many acronyms, so many different journeys that we go through. But one of the things that I wanted your thoughts on is, as we look at VMDR in Qualys, that we have many clients that might have Qualys, they might have ServiceNow, but they're not connected. We have others that they are connected and are kind of growing that people in process. Let's spend some time to walk through that evolution, kind of starting with a customer that maybe perhaps has ServiceNow, but they're looking at implementing Qualys to get some more information in. What's that journey look like as they build out, particularly from ImagineX's perspective, the people and process around tightening their cybersecurity?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, we're a little biased, but to me, I think that's where partners and implementation partners like Thirdera and ImagineX are so important in companies' journeys of figuring out their IT transformation. So Qualys and ServiceNow, and some of the folks out there may be saying, wait, Qualys has already had this integration with ServiceNow for a number of years. Like what's new about
What's
this?
different, right?
Yeah. And so at a high level, I think there's kind of three different ways that ServiceNow and Qualys can connect and can kind of play together. So there's a CMDB sync, which has been in place, has gone through a number of iterations, and it's a way to true up and try and continue to validate the asset repository within ServiceNow and align it to the scanning targets and what's being managed within Qualys.
Right.
Bidirectional sync, really asset driven.
Mm-hmm.
A couple of years ago, ServiceNow introduced and has been investing in the SecOps module, which includes a vulnerability response piece of it. There's a lot of great workflow. There's some prioritization engines and rules that are built in there, and there's some native connections to automatically pull Qualys data into that piece of ServiceNow.
Right.
The third now is this ITSM. VMDR, for ITSM, which is it's a marketplace app on the ServiceNow marketplace that Qualys has developed, and is another connection to be able to actually pull back more vulnerability data into the ITSM module. So you don't have to purchase the SecOps module to be able to get some of the capability and some of the functionality that other connection enabled. So, this is a little bit of, hot off the presses. And so I think it was interesting. The demo was great, and Mehul provided, some really good visuals of what the functionality looks like and can look like. But some of the dialogue that happened at lunch and in the hallways after during the conference was, so what about this? And what about that? And started, talking about these different
all the boundary conditions, right?
Exactly. And all these different scenarios that existing customers are thinking about. One of the other women that I spoke with, they've just spent 3 years working with ServiceNow and Qualys to build their integration and optimize their vulnerability response module in ServiceNow.
Right.
And so she's like scratching her head saying, well, now was all that money well spent, or did you guys just go ahead and release this for free? And this is one of the value propositions of this newest connector, is that if you are an existing ServiceNow customer, this connection, this marketplace app, comes with your subscription to VMDR Qualys. So it's when I looked at it, it's definitely been an evolution, and I would say it's not. The evolution isn't done, and
the evolution isn't done. And when I looked at it again, when I was able to catch the first half of that session, and when I saw the capabilities, where I really seem like it fit is those customers that are starting to stand up, just kind of base level. Oh, I need a vulnerability response process. What's that? Right? That kind of base zero, ground zero. Now you could stand up VMDR and start getting that into ITSM change to be able to resolve those prioritized, vetted, vulnerabilities that Qualys is finding. But it really only starts the foundation, right? It only gets them started. And that's where I think ServiceNow's SecOps piece to bring in vulnerability response, because now Qualys can feed right into it, have that true risk coming in, have that information so you can prioritize it. But also very likely, particularly as clients get larger, they're going to have more than one source. Qualys is great, but very often, and I won't name the names, but there's very often multiple sources that are in the platform for different technologies, different environments. As enterprises grow, that happens. That there's multiple sources, and I think that's where you think down that journey, you can start with Qualys VMDR into change, then Qualys into SecOps into change. But also, then you can grow into saying, well, vulnerabilities at some point either can become security incidents where we are breached,
Yep.
or they become security incidents where I need to look at, I need to fire up my security team to really do security incident response to be able to look at, is this going to become something that is
Yep.
front page that we need to avoid?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. No, and I think that's my initial take, kind of that journey that you
Right.
talked about. So we've been part of the beta. We've been able to deploy this in our ServiceNow sandbox, and so we've been able to poke around a little bit. But again, our sandbox doesn't have all those fringe cases, doesn't have all the different. We only have a few hundred assets in our sandbox. We don't have 100,000 assets in our sandbox, right?
Yeah. So at scale,
it's going to change and it's going to be different. But one of the things I talked about with Nagi yesterday is exactly what you were saying. I think this is a great. It reduces the barrier for entry to up the game of companies' vulnerability management programs. Right. It's a way to actually start to introduce this concept of business risk and prioritizing, what do you fix first, right? The number of vulnerabilities, and there were some very interesting stats that they had put up. I wish I took a picture of one of their slides or got one of their slides. They showed this kind of funnel of, there's like 180,000 defined vulnerabilities.
Known vulnerabilities. Yeah, I remember that slide.
Right, 180,000. Then they chopped it down into the ones with known exploits, then ones with weaponized exploits, right? There's some that are just, security researchers trying to figure out what is, if all the stars align and you're somehow on the box already, you can do XYZ. Yeah. And it gets down to there's only a couple hundred named kind of front page vulnerabilities. Mm-hmm. And so for organizations and smaller security teams, less mature, IT teams, or companies that, IT is an important piece of the business, but it's not the core piece of the business. Right? How do you make sense? How do you get from that, 180,000 known vulnerabilities, multiply that out based on the number of assets you have, down to the ones that actually may sink the ship, and so I think it's a great enabler for IT teams who may be used to working and interacting in the ServiceNow platform to start talking the same language with the security teams who are spending time in Qualys and understanding and talking vulnerabilities, because it's really starting to connect those dots, and build this common lexicon of risk, which then the IT and security team can lock arms and go talk to their business stakeholders and say, this is why we need to patch your system. This is why we need to have these, maintenance windows. This is the business risk. So that's what I'm really excited about. It's like the technology is now enabling and at a point where it's making some of that people and process change a little bit easier.
Right. A little bit easier indeed. Because, as you look at the stats too, kind of from the industry side of things, the cyber attack surface, the way I keep saying it, is the attack surface continues to multiply and grow at compounding rates. Yeah. And more organizations are really having a tough time keeping a handle on even what is my cyber attack surface. Forget managing the vulnerabilities on it, and then face that with the opposition. We face a very predatory set of hackers. It's really frightening with the tools that they have. That tightening cybersecurity is so critical. In that, out of those stats in the industry, there are many organizations that know it's a problem but have struggled because, like you said, the technology hasn't been there. There hasn't been a good kind of segue in to start. Yep. And it sounds like, from your perspective, and I'd agree from what I saw, that this is kind of a good way into it, that you can start with VMDR, get that started. The other thing you talked about is having the security teams that might be living in Qualys starting to talk to the IT teams, the ITSM teams. Tell me a little bit more about some of the people and process that you've seen in between that wall, if you could say. How have you helped organizations build those relationships so that that moves more quickly? Because speed is king in tightening cybersecurity too.
Absolutely. Yeah. And one of the things I talked about with Nagi also yesterday, where, unfortunately, this is something that we help, almost all of our clients are organizations that are implementing or trying to mature their vulnerability management programs. Mm-hmm. This is a challenge that's faced where the security team has one remit. They have a certain set of objectives. They have a certain set of KPIs and metrics that they're trying to achieve. The IT operations teams have a different set of metrics, a different set of KPIs, different incentives, and they're often misaligned. And so, unfortunately, we get into this kind of no-win situation where security is trying to provide visibility, identify all the vulnerabilities. They don't want to be the ones to miss the chink in the armor where the arrow comes through.
Right.
From a security practitioner, and this is a bit of the reactive frame of mind, but a security practitioner is saying, well, if I pointed it out, then it's not my fault that it got compromised.
Yeah.
Okay. Right.
Wow.
And that's where you get these giant spreadsheets and millions of vulnerabilities that get exported and tossed over the fence to the IT teams with you got to fix it. And, there's processes that may be
overwhelmed, right?
A 7-day SLA for criticals and a 30-day SLA for highs. And okay, is that realistic? And then the IT teams receive this volley of, this mountain of vulnerabilities. And oh, by the way, they also have a day job of running their IT operations, partnering with, their application owners, their business owners. And so how do they fit that in?
Right.
And so, so for me, even before this announcement and this connection, like what this is enabling is something that we've been talking about for the last 10 years. You want to get IT and security aligned on what are the business outcomes and what are the true risks? What are the crown jewels? What are your most important assets? What are your mitigating controls that actually may bump a Qualys critical vulnerability down to a company ABC medium or low vulnerability because you've got all these other mitigating controls or you've got processes in place, right? And so it's connecting those different dots of what is the vulnerability, what is the asset, who's using that asset, what's your control environment around those assets that may be reducing the likelihood of that exploit being exploited, that vulnerability being exploited.
I agree completely. And it kind of extends that journey that we talked about a little bit, that you're really getting to the point where inside of ServiceNow, I now have vulnerability response, security incident response. I have that common services data model. So I have that if this CI goes down, what business services, business capabilities are impacted. So I see the business impact. But then you also alluded to, really as I get further down this journey, I'm bringing in policy and compliance and integrated risk. So now, based on that common services data model, I truly have a framework of controls and a framework of risks. Now, like you said,
built on top of that
this panacea that we've talked about for a decade.
Yeah, right. And it's all then built upon this foundation of assets, hardware assets, software assets, business processes that is in many ways
all
the
these
bread and butter
things
of ServiceNow. That is the foundation of running that platform. And so, it's it can create this perfect ecosystem of all these different data points being presented in a single pane of glass, in a single tool set that will enable companies to make better decisions faster, with more confidence, and manage their risk.
Yeah, indeed.
Now,
got,
getting there is the fun part, and it's never
indeed.
the same.
Getting there is indeed the fun part, and that's where I wanted to spend our last couple of minutes, Mike.
Yeah.
If someone's watching this and they want to learn some more, what steps would you have? And then I've got some from a Thirdera standpoint, but I always like to get your perspective first.
Yeah.
If someone's wrestling with oh my gosh, I need to tighten cybersecurity. We've been looking at Qualys, we're looking at ServiceNow, but my people and process might be struggling. What's a good next step with ImagineX?
Yeah, absolutely. So ImagineX, we try to make sense of cybersecurity, and we want to bring a pragmatic and practical lens to helping our customers, helping our clients establish, mature, and operate their security programs. So for me, and if you're in the audience and you're saying, oh my gosh, you're talking way past where we are, right, that's okay. We meet our customers where they are, and wherever you are, is a 0.1 on the maturity scale or a 3.9 on the maturity scale, there's always improvement opportunities, and we meet our customers where they are. So, from a call to action perspective, if you've heard something that's interesting, reach out to me. My email is very easy, mike.ellerhorst@ImagineXconsulting.com. Connect with me on LinkedIn. If you're an existing Qualys customer and you're really interested in, that angle, you can reach out to Qualys@ImagineX.com. That'll get into my team, into the right group, and we can help talk through next steps. In some ways, vulnerability management feels a little bit like motherhood and apple pie. Every company needs to be doing it, and in concept, it's not that hard. You find you find a hole in your armor, you fix the hole in the armor, you rinse and repeat. But it is pretty complex.
Well, that's the thing is, in my experience, it can feel overwhelming. Like you said, I've got this million entry spreadsheet that I tossed over the wall on either side. Either I tossed it or I received it.
Right.
So many of the organizations I've spoken to and worked with in the past have felt that overwhelm. And with their day job keeping them busy, it's like, well, that's overwhelming, and it gets set aside. And so I think that's where, as clients reach out to yourselves, and as they reach out to myself or the others at Thirdera, we can help walk through that. One of the things I wanted to share is our security and risk team just recently released a no-cost assessment called a security hardening assessment. So let me share this screen. It's just a one-page view. But in this security hardening assessment, what they get is a chance for our experts to come in and really look at two primary areas. If I could talk about it from a ServiceNow, from a now perspective, is looking at vulnerability response as well as configuration compliance. Configuration compliance is as you're standing up your assets, as you're standing up your servers, are you following all the different rules that we've put in place to configure them properly? And those two tools, from a ServiceNow perspective, are fundamental to really tighten cybersecurity. And so this free, security hardening assessment is a way for clients to reach out and say, hey, can I get a quick glimpse? And you can see it's a way for us to come in very, very quickly in about 2 weeks time frame, give you some recommendations of where you're at, as well as kind of what would the next steps be to implement, those things on your environment. And like you said, let's meet our clients where they're at.
Yeah, and you hit on something that's really, really great there, Troy. And I forgot to mention, but one of the things that we talked about a lot yesterday, a number of the folks on the stage, was how do we continue to fix the vulnerabilities before they get into the environment? And so one of the stats that kind of blew my mind was, of all of the hundreds of millions of data points that Qualys has collected in their threat intelligence and their research team has evaluated, about half of the assets that had Log4j, the Log4Shell vulnerability on them, about half of the assets were end of life or end of service. And so from a basic IT hygiene perspective, if you're keeping up with software updates, if you're maintaining that configuration compliance, you've eliminated half of your attack surface for one of the most, widespread vulnerabilities in the last decade. So, this configuration evaluation and making sure that what's being deployed into your production environment is hard and is safe and is good is an incredibly valuable process and capability to have from maintaining a good cybersecurity posture.
Just that data statement is just reeling in my head, that if I heard you right, that half of the vulnerabilities were on systems that were already end of life.
Yep.
That for a number of different reasons, we knew we should have been standing this thing down.
Vendors were not releasing.
That's a security process. That's good config lifecycle management that can address half of the vulnerabilities. That's huge.
Yeah, it reduces that 1,000,000-line spreadsheet by half or more, right? It makes that prioritization exercise easier. It makes the actual conversation, and it strengthens that partnership between security and IT, because you're no longer fighting over this debt that you're carrying as an organization.
Right. Indeed.
Yeah.
Well, again,
it's awesome to hear that Thirdera's got that offering out there. So
yeah, our security team is pretty stellar, and if you have not met Thirdera and you're watching this, Thirdera is a ServiceNow Elite partner, and one of the things that we strive to stand out as, and we do, is really being able to span the platform, because ServiceNow is ridiculously large, wonderfully large. But before joining Thirdera, I used to say, if you ever meet someone that says they know all of ServiceNow, run the other way. At Thirdera, I've been able to really be supported by practice teams that really do know this platform, and our security team is no exception. And so it's been great to have some time to talk about this area of the platform and spend time with you, Mike. So thank you for jumping on a Workflow Wednesday with me. I look forward to having some conversation with clients together.
Thanks again, Troy. Always appreciate the time.
Yeah, thanks so much.